Yesterday's time's irrelevant because the track appeared to be quicker this morning. Most people who were out without particularly trying to qualify were still doing quicker times than they did yesterday, and Piquet has quite wisely used going out first as a tactic. He was down at the end of the pit road at the head of the queue some 10 minutes before they got the green light, and that gives him a chance to get a clear lap, because the big problem in qualifying for the drivers is that when you, the driver, are on a quick lap, there may be other drivers who are not on a quick lap. This you will see as we go on, because they really only do one fast lap and then they go slowly to cool their tires down. And so one of the big problems is to get a clear track. So we'll try and point this out to you. You'll see drivers looking for a clear track before they build up to their quick lap.
And behind Nelson Piquet, as he builds up speed, is his Swiss teammate Mark Surer in the other Brabham BMW. If you like, protecting Nelson Piquet and helping to keep the track clear. I don't think that's the main purpose he's out. But when Nelson Piquet comes round at the end of this lap, we can expect him to really go for it. This BMW engine of his produces some 1,000 horsepower plus in qualifying trim. He's got the softest compounded Pirelli tyres on his car. They have been preheated to make sure that the consistency is good for the track, which is nice and hot. And Nelson Piquet is approaching the line now. Over it he goes. His target time, 1 minute 22.40.
Yes, and he looks as if he's gone straight in for a quick one, because he really built up. You can see him sliding the car there. He might have taken 2 laps. He's been lucky locking the front brake. A little puff of smoke from the right front wheel then. But Nelson's gone straight into the 10/10ths mode. Big slide, tail coming out there. 1,000 horsepower, even with those big tires, is plenty to unstick the rear end of the car. Difficult to get into a really good rhythm to come out cold and go straight on to 10/10ths. But a man of Nelson's experience and talent certainly can do that. Now, out onto the long straight. They were exceeding 300 kilometers an hour on this straight this morning, and they'll be running more power now.
Twice a world champion, and tomorrow's Australian Grand Prix is going to be Nelson Piquet's last drive for the Brabham team that he's been in for 8 years, and he will want to leave on a very high note. Part of that high note could be being in pole position on the starting grid for when the Australian Grand Prix begins. And now he's coming down towards the Mitsubishi corner, the hairpin at the end of the lap, approaching it at well over 200 kilometers an hour. Over the line he goes. 1:24.5 was my unofficial timing, and the official timing 1:23.35, which means to say that he is still in 4th position, because his time is still slower than those of Mansell, Senna and Rosberg yesterday. Now he's slowing down.
Yes, he'll take a slow lap to cool his tires. There's his teammate Mark Surer, who's come into the pits for some sort of an adjustment, probably not quite happy with the way his car was balanced, the way it was handling. But Piquet's done well, because he's still got a clear track. Now he's doing a slow lap, so he may just stay out there, use this lap to cool his tires down, not slide the car around, and then build up to another quick one, which, if he's got the right compound on that he can do that, he'll want to, because interestingly enough, nobody else has gone out yet. Only the 2 Brabhams have gone straight out. Now you see how slowly he's going. That's to give the tires plenty of time to cool down and not to scrub them at all, create no extra friction.
18 pole positions in his career, Nelson Piquet. Coming down the fastest part of the course, the Decaturville Terrace section, named the Brabham Straight for the Australian Grand Prix. Now he goes slowly into racetrack hairpin, and as James said, he's literally cooling it, taking it nice and easy on this lap to give the tyres a chance to stabilise themselves. And then as he comes out of Mitsubishi corner and lines it up for the straight, down will go his right foot if he's going for a fast lap again, and we don't know that for sure. It looks to me as though he's not, because Piquet comes into the pits, and at the present moment he is the only car on the circuit, and we are now some 6 minutes into this qualifying session. And it's often not until the very closing minutes that we get the blindingly fast laps when everybody knows what the score is, what they've got to go for, and go out to try to beat the target.
Yes, yesterday we had a very... And there goes one of the McLarens heading out onto the track. That's Niki Lauda. He's on brand new tyres, so he'll be taking a lap or so quite gently to scrub them in. With these big racing tyres, they work... They don't work at all, obviously, when they're brand new, but they work best when they're about a lap old. For 2 or 3 laps, the tyres are best when they've got maximum rubber on, apart from just scrubbing and scuffing the surface to get them run in, as it were. You can see the sticky labels still on them. But yesterday we had a very good session because the 1-lap super soft rubber compound qualifying tyres, which are normally the way to get the quick time, and they only last 1 lap or sometimes 2, depending on the track, they weren't working any better than the normal race tyres that are designed to go for the full distance. So we had the rare spectacle of a lot of the drivers staying out for quite a lot of laps. But I think we probably won't get that today, because if we were going to get it, I think probably most of the cars would have been out already. So they are, it would appear, they've sorted out making the qualifying tyres work. Patrick Tambay has just left the pits in his Renault, or just leaving, and incidentally the Renault team, who've had a pretty abysmal season one way or another, are going better than usual here, and Tambay and Warwick are enjoying at least a reasonably drivable car.
So Patrick Tambay, who has the radio camera on his car, and we're looking at it live now as Tambay approaches the right-hander here, accelerates away, and he's approaching towards the fastest part of the course. This is the Thomson live camera, which has been developed for just this job. He's coming into Stag Turn now at about 120 kilometers an hour, down towards Brewery Bend, which he'll take at about 150 kilometers an hour, accelerate away, up through the gearbox, into 5th gear, into 6th gear, up towards 310 kilometers an hour. You are traveling with Patrick Tambay. We're coming to the braking area now. You'll see from the color change on the circuit, bump, there it is, into the right-hander at racetrack hairpin. That's the slowest part of the course, about 100 kilometers an hour, round paddock turn. It's a long, long left-hander which keeps on going left, which leads into the right sweep at about 200 miles, about 200 Ks, then down to the hairpin at Mitsubishi corner, with the grandstands to the left as he goes down the finishing straight and down towards the S's. And here he is doing about 260 Ks. Now, while this has been going on, Niki Lauda is out on the course.
Yes, and Tambay not yet got his tyres as he wants them. You have to bring them in carefully, so he's doing another slow lap. Here is Lauda, who I would suspect is doing the same thing that Tambay did by doing 2 slow laps to get his tyres right. It seems that they come in better on this track if they're warmed up slowly, because if they warm up quickly, the rear tyres heat up faster than the fronts, and of course then the rear tyres tend to overheat and they lose grip at the back. So Lauda bringing his tyres in very carefully. It's quite an important tactical thing. You can ruin tyres by driving incorrectly on them. So now Lauda coming round towards the end of the lap, and he will then be starting a quick one, I have no doubt. Right. No, it doesn't sound like it. He's over the start-finish line. I think Niki is still taking, yes, he's still taking a slow, gentle one.
So, with some 10 minutes of this 60-minute session completed, it's still Keke Rosberg in pole position, 1,000th of a second faster than Ayrton Senna, with Nigel Mansell third, all of them on yesterday's times. Nelson Piquet in 4th position, Eddie Cheever 5th, and Ricardo Patrese 6th. Live at Adelaide 13 minutes into the 60-minute qualifying session, which is going to decide the grid positions for tomorrow's Australian Grand Prix. You look at the reigning world champion, Alain Prost, who had a bad stomach upset yesterday, who was well down the grid compared with what he expected, only in 7th position. And as you look at Prost, it is still Keke Rosberg fastest from yesterday's time, followed by Ayrton Senna, with Nigel Mansell in 3rd position, Nelson Piquet in 4th place on yesterday's time because he was slower when he went out today, Eddie Cheever 5th and Patrese 6th, those two in the Alfa Romeos. And here is Prost coming down the Decaturville Brabham straight on his way to start a quick one, probably the lap after this.
Yes, I'm afraid to say we've got relatively little activity on the circuit at the moment. The reason for that, of course, is that most of the teams have done all their setting up work by now. They've got the cars as good as they think they're going to get them. And the purpose of this session is purely to establish grid positions, and it is your best lap and only your best lap that counts. Therefore, they've got an hour, and they've got to build themselves up just to do the one very quick lap. I mean, they'll have 2 or 3 or more attempts at it, but it's quite tactical when they come out, and at the moment I think everybody's waiting for somebody else to make a move. So there are a lot of cars and drivers sitting in the pits looking at each other and looking at the times of the people who are out on the track. So far we've got a quickish lap from Nelson Piquet, but still not as quick as his yesterday's qualifying, and everybody else has been pretty quiet.
They mustn't leave it too long, of course, those who have not been out. Thus far, only 6 drivers in this almost 15-minute first quarter of the last hour have been out on the track. And they are Nelson Piquet, Alain Prost, Marc Surer, Niki Lauda, Patrick Tambay and Gerhard Berger. So that means to say that there are 20 left to come out, and if they leave it too late, the track will be congested. They can run the risk of coming up to somebody who's still working up to speed whilst they're on their fast lap. And Patrick Tambay here, number 15, the amiable Frenchman in the French Renault, driving tomorrow in his last race for Renault before joining the Beatrice team with Alan Jones next year, is certainly building up to speed now. It looks as though he's got his tyres scrubbed and he's going for it.
Yes, he's on a quick one. You can tell by the way he's throwing the car around. So Tambay on the first of his quick laps. Not quite using all the road there. And here we see from inside the car. Oh, we did. Now onto the main straight. This is where they get up to approximately 300 kilometers an hour. Going over to the other side of the road there just to find the least bumpy part of the track. It's a little bit bumpy there, but basically the surface is very good here in Adelaide. In fact, it's not the only thing. Everything is very good. It's been, so far, a wonderfully well-organised Grand Prix. Tambay, here we see it exactly as he sees it from beside his head, just finishing the lap, coming round the last hairpin onto the pit straight, up through the gearbox, 6-speed gearbox, over the start-finish line. And Tambay has improved his time. That was a 1 minute 24.4, putting him up to 11th place.
From 16th place, so Patrick Tambay, who we are riding with now, has moved up 5 places, but it's still Rosberg from yesterday's times in pole position with Senna second, Mansell third. I've got my stopwatch running on Alain Prost at the moment, who has warmed up his tyres. I can see him coming in now as we go round with Patrick Tambay. And here is Prost, goes across the line now. 1:25 exactly, I made it, and his previous time was he's slower than he was yesterday, but he's still going.
But following Prost on the circuit is Niki Lauda, who has improved his yesterday's time. He's just done a 1:23.9, which moves him up to 7th, just in front of teammate Alain Prost on the list at the moment. Lauda's been out on the track a little bit longer than Prost.
Now, the McLarens do not always qualify as well as some of the other cars in the race, largely because their Porsche-built tag engines will not take as much qualifying boost as, say, the Hondas in the Williams or the Renault engines in the Lotus. But Prost is now going, and Lauda up there behind him.
Yes, we expected it, and there's Prost. Lauda just coming into the background there. They're both on quick laps at the moment. Lauda, incidentally, went very much better this morning in the untimed session than he had done. There you see Prost using all the road there into the last hairpin. Now on full power, 1,000 horsepower.
And over the line he goes, 1:23.01 according to my timing, and indeed he has moved up. Alain Prost has moved up into 4th position now. He has displaced Nelson Piquet, and the listings at the moment, and we are now on the 18th minute of this 60-minute session, Rosberg is still the fastest, and he has yet to go out. Very significant. Senna is still second. He hasn't been out. Mansell is still third. He hasn't been out. Prost is now 4th. He has moved up from the 7th position he had yesterday, and he will therefore have used one set of his tyres. There is Niki Lauda, who at the present moment is in 9th position. And I remind you, those of you who are knowledgeable, and tell you those of you who aren't, that in this qualifying session the drivers are only allowed 2 sets of tyres. They must nominate the type of compound that they want before the practicing begins, and since at some circuits you can only do 1 lap on a set of qualifying tyres, which will cost about $1,500, you can imagine that if you make the wrong choice of compound, you've got a major problem. Niki Lauda then really hammering round this magnificent Adelaide circuit. There in the top left corner of your screens you see the qualifiers on Nigel Mansell's car, and Nigel Mansell was fastest in the non-qualifying session this morning, faster than his teammate Keke Rosberg's qualifying time yesterday. So when we see the Englishman in his Union Jack painted helmet go out, we can expect something pretty interesting, and we've got something pretty interesting because Alain Prost has moved up into pole position. That stomach upset of his has really been conquered. 1:22.263 is the new pole position time. Down to second goes Rosberg, and to third goes Senna, and we're looking at Alan Jones.
I never heard of it.
So, back live at Adelaide, and you're looking at Nigel Mansell, the man who was fastest this morning in the non-qualifying session and is currently in 4th position on the grid, with Alain Prost having moved up to pole position with a time of 1:22.263, and this is a replay of Jacques Laffite, the Frenchman, just missing, completely writing off the front of his French Ligier by avoiding the concrete blocks, and Nigel Mansell is building up speed. 4th fastest at the moment. He's won the last 2 Grand Prix, the Grand Prix of Europe at Brands Hatch and then the South African Grand Prix 2 weeks ago. He's had his psychological breakthrough after having driven in over 70 Grand Prix without a victory. Now he's won 2, and he desperately wants to make it 3 in a row, finish the season on a high note and establish some sort of psychological plus with his new teammate Nelson Piquet next year, who's leaving Brabham this year to join the Williams team in 1986.
Well, we apologise to you after the last commercial break that things are a bit quiet, and they're really hotting up now because Mansell is expected to put in a really hot lap. That is one of the arrows having had a little spin, just being pushed away. Ayrton Senna has just gone out, and there's no doubt that the track is quicker than it was yesterday, so yesterday's times are going to be pretty much irrelevant. Prost currently is quickest on 1:22.2, but we've already had several people in the 22s this morning. Helmut Berger in the Arrows has done a 22.5, Tambay has done a 22.6, and the times are coming, and Michele Alboreto has just moved up to 2nd place with a 22.3. Nelson Piquet out on the track.
And you see what we were talking about earlier. They've left it late to come out, a lot of them, and as a result of it, the track is very congested. And it means to say that your fast line can be interfered with. Nelson Piquet going up towards Stag Turn, now round it, down towards the brewery.
And it looks as if Nelson's on a quick one. Nelson very much on the limit, sliding the car a bit. When he didn't use all the road there, he was a little bit untidy coming onto the straight. And remember, that corner is important because your speed onto the straight dictates your speed all the way down the straight. The quicker you come on, the quicker you go for the whole straight. So in fact, I think it looks as if he slowed it down now. Yes, Nelson obviously unhappy with that lap. He will slow it down, let his tyres cool down, and then build up again, because these tyres need to be at the optimum temperature. When they've been running really hard, they get too hot and they lose grip.
26 minutes gone, 34 to go, and here is the man, Ayrton Senna, the incredible young Brazilian who's won 2 Grand Prix this year, who's been on the front row of the grid 9 times this season, and who is an absolute flyer. Currently, Senna is in 4th position.
Yes, and he already is looking smoother than he was yesterday. We were all expecting Senna to be comfortably fastest yesterday, as he had been in the untimed sessions. And when he got out there, he seemed to panic a little bit and get a bit untidy. That was up on the curb, but it wasn't untidy. And he certainly looks a lot smoother and neater than he did in qualifying yesterday. He seemed to suddenly feel a bit of pressure and didn't give up his best. I'm sure he would agree with that. However, he looks better now. So Senna at the end of the straight now, going into the final twisty section of the circuit before they come back to complete the lap. Left-hander, full power on, give it a squirt, just riding up on the curb a little bit. Senna certainly is at 10/10 here. Now to the final hairpin, full boot, and he nearly got held up over the line. And Senna is quickest with that lap. You've just seen him, a 1:21.750. And what's more, it looks as if he's keeping going for another quick lap. He reckons his tyres will last for 2.
Great stuff. First of all, Keke Rosberg was in pole position when this session started. That was yesterday's time. Then Alain Prost took pole position from him. Now, Ayrton Senna, the fast man in Grand Prix racing, 1:21.750, and as James has just pointed out, he's keeping it up. Now, the order at the present moment, 28 minutes into the session, with 32 minutes to go, is Senna fastest, Prost is second, Alboreto is third, Rosberg is fourth, Mansell is fifth, Berger is sixth. So it is the JPS Lotus that you're looking at. Then the Williams of Prost, then a Ferrari, Alboreto, then the other Williams, Rosberg. So both the Williams are in the top 4. Then Nigel Mansell is in 5th position, 5th, and in 6th position it's Gerhard Berger in the arrows, and this looks even faster from Ayrton Senna. He's coming across the line into our view very shortly. Here he is. I'm watching the monitor, which gives us an instant readout of his time as he crosses the line. 1:21.750 was his previous lap time, and it looks as though that remains the fastest time. No, 1:21.346. 1:21.348. Wrong to the thousandth of a second, and that was a time that's going to be very hard for anyone to beat.
The others, Murray, but that really sets the standard. Now, Senna, as you can see, has slowed it down. He'll be cooling his tyres down, and that looks like Keke Rosberg's back view to me. And Rosberg just waving another car through because he's just going slowly, getting his tyres in. You can see the sticky labels still on them. But Rosberg, if anybody can challenge Senna, I would say that Rosberg is the man most likely to, and certainly he was 1/1000th of a second quicker than Senna yesterday when they finished the qualifying. So things get pretty close around here. So Rosberg, that movement is just to put a little bit of heat into the tyres, just to get the rubber up to working temperature, but to bring all 4 tyres up together. It's a very important part of the driver's skill, is being able to get his tyres as he wants them, when he wants them. And it does depend on how you treat them.
Well, Rosberg, who was fastest when this session began after yesterday's qualifying, is now down to 5th position. He has been passed on time by Ayrton Senna, his teammate Nigel Mansell, who is now 2nd, by Alain Prost, who is 3rd, by Michele Alboreto in the Ferrari, who is 4th. Rosberg, that we look at, is 5th. Gerhard Berger is 6th. The target time now, 1:21.348 by Ayrton Senna. And now Rosberg is winding it up. Behind him, he has a V6 turbocharged 1.5 litre Honda engine producing about 1,000 horsepower. Watch him go.
No, he's still going to take another slow one. You see, he wants to bring his tyres in nice and gently to get them absolutely right. So Rosberg is taking 2 laps before he's going to go.
So now we've got just about half the session completed. Senna leads, Mansell 2nd, Prost 3rd, Alboreto 4th, Rosberg 5th and Berger 6th. Back live at Adelaide, and Adelaide is alive because Ayrton Senna has gone faster yet, 1:21.053, but quicker still, Nigel Mansell, fastest this morning, who currently holds pole position in a searing time of 1:20.537 ahead of Senna, Prost, Alboreto, Rosberg and Berger.
Yes, and as we watch Rosberg, who is on a quick one, we've seen what the car can do because Mansell has taken it round. Suddenly the times are really tumbling. The track seems to have worn off its newness. It seems that it's suddenly run in. And Rosberg's time for that lap was 1:21.8, so he's still a bit off the pace. That was his first hard run. We'll keep an eye on him to see if he stays out there. He'll slow it down to cool the tyres. And that's Nigel Mansell, current holder of the pole position. Just going through there. Here is Mansell. Let's see if he's on a quick lap. Certainly looks like it. You don't drive like that if you're cruising. Mansell really bouncing the curves there. Whilst it straightens the corner out, it also has the effect of unbalancing the car a bit. Mansell out onto the main straight. Nigel Mansell, who really surprised everybody with that time of 1:20.5, over 2 seconds faster than he was yesterday. A speed of 169 kilometers an hour, average speed for the lap. And he's now busily trying to improve that time.
With that 1,000 horsepower engine, and he's half a second quicker than Senna in 2nd place. That may not sound very much to you, but it's a long, long time in Grand Prix racing. And now Mansell's going across the line to complete the lap, and I'm watching the monitor to see whether it changes. 1:20.537 is his time from the previous lap, and it's unaltered, so he's still fastest. Now, an interesting thing as he approaches the curb is a lot of them here are an Australian first, because they're made out of a specially patented material. It's glass fibre reinforced concrete bolted to the circuit, and Mansell's riding high up over some of them. He's straightening out the curves as much as he can. His tyres are lasting superbly.
This looks a pretty good lap too to me. He's gone for 2 quick ones on the trot. He obviously thinks his tyres haven't yet got too hot, and this one looks a little bit neater than the last one. Now you see there he's using all the road, but it does no damage to ride up those curves on the exit. It's more of a problem when you hit them on the apex of a corner. And so 300 kilometers an hour on the straight here now, hard on the brakes. He slowed it right down. So Mansell, for some reason, has aborted that lap, as we see Ayrton Senna getting ready to go out and challenge. Senna was quickest before. He will be looking at the times. What they've got there is a monitor with other people's times on, so he's sitting there looking at the fact that he's been displaced. And at the moment, he's happy to bide his time by the look of things. And I think that might be quite a good tactic, because the track is clearly getting faster and faster as the cars run, and he would therefore be sensible to leave it till pretty close to the end of the session, because I suspect that the track is likely to be at its quickest right at the end.
37 minutes out of 60 completed. Nigel Mansell on pole position with today's time of 1 minute 20.537. Ayrton Senna coolly, calmly waiting in the pits to go out and try and go faster. Keke Rosberg, Nigel Mansell's teammate, in third position on the grid. Alain Prost, and there he is currently fourth, with Michele Alboreto higher up than he has been for a long time, fifth in the Ferrari, Berger still sixth, Torbe seventh, Piquet eighth, and De Angelis ninth.
And Prost is on a quick one. He's clearly built up the speed. Prost headed the list for a short while today. He was the first one to go quicker than yesterday's times. Senna still sitting in his car. You can see the little monitor that he's got there with the list of times, which is a computer readout. As soon as somebody improves their time, it goes straight up on the screen. And Prost's off. Well, Prost had a lot of spins yesterday, and he really seems to have got some pretty good at spinning this weekend.
James, I know that Prost had a bit of a tummy upset yesterday, did he not?
Yes, well, I think in Australia you call that a hangover. But in fairness to Prost, he has won the World Championship already. And mind you, I suppose a tummy ache is one of the things you get with a hangover. But he's back to full fitness today. I think he drove it out of himself yesterday. I know he went to bed at about 7 o'clock last night, and he's fully fit. But that was uncharacteristic, the spin. So that supported that lap, and that's a pity, because he worked hard to get the tyres ready, and in a way he's wasted a set. There's the Lotus team watching their little TV monitor screen. And Senna, is he putting his gloves on? Yes, I think that they are slowly preparing to go out. But it becomes very tactical when you've only got 2 sets of tyres that are going to work for you, and they're only going to last 2 or 3 laps at the most. Here, you have to use them very carefully, and you want to go out when there aren't too many other cars on the track to risk getting held up, but you also want to go out when the track is quickest, and it is far more of an art than a science getting your timing right. It requires a lot of educated guessing and a bit of luck to get everything right.
What we don't know, of course, is whether Alain Prost here flat-spotted his tyres. By that I mean, when you spin, you're obviously going round on stationary tyres, and you can literally make a flat spot which unbalances the wheels, which creates vibration in the car, which slows down the driver. It doesn't look as though he did, because he's certainly tramping now. It's still Mansell leading, Senna second, Rosberg third, and this man, Prost, is fourth.
Yeah, and after that spin, Prost has got going again, and he has incidentally improved his time just before it, and you saw the rear of the car just jump out of line a little bit then. And Prost has improved to 4th position with a time of 1:28.89. Prost coming round to complete another lap. We'll see if he's improved his time.
Well, I've started my stopwatch. These tyres, as I've said before, are lasting much, much longer. Now, if Prost can drive smoother than he did on the previous lap, his tyres are obviously up to temperature. He is clearly happy, and he's certainly found his personal limits. He's coming up to one of the Ferraris now. I saw Michele Alboreto go out just in front of him, but it's Johansson, and Prost has had to go wide there. Now, you may not think it, but even a slight deviation like that from the fastest line can slow you enough adversely to affect your position on the grid. Mansell leading, Senna second, Rosberg third, this man Prost fourth. We have completed 41 minutes of the session, and Prost is slowing down. This is a replay. No, it's a replay as we come up to see him pass Johansson again. And there's quite a lot of fast men out on the circuit now, including Prost, and as Prost comes up to complete the lap and Senna's getting ready to go out, it's Mansell, Senna, Rosberg, Prost, Alboreto and Berger. 17 minutes to go, live at Adelaide, to the completion of the final qualifying 1-hour session. And Ayrton Senna is out ahead of his teammate Elio De Angelis on his second set of qualifying tyres, as is De Angelis. And ahead of him on time is Nigel Mansell, half a second quicker than the Brazilian here, number 12, with De Angelis number 11 behind him. And Ayrton Senna already this year has had 6 pole positions, 9 times in the front row in only his first year in the Lotus team with its Renault engines. So watch this lap, it's going to be sensational, I predict, because now as his speed builds up and his tyre temperatures rise, the Brazilian knows the track perfectly. He's got the car set up perfectly. The turbo boost with the big turbochargers on the V6 Renault engine will be generating some 1,000 horsepower. And Ayrton Senna, who Jackie Stewart said earlier today is still probably at least 2 years off his peak, is still a darn sight better than most of the people here today. And I think it is going to show. But Mansell, who has had 2 pole positions in his career, is currently on target for the 3rd in his racing life. Senna. There's De Angelis behind him. They've got the wings set up to give them the best possible compromise between downforce and speed on the straight, and you can tell from the way that Senna is throwing the car about as he comes up behind Philippe Streff, the Frenchman, who moves over and gives him room. That was a good bit of driving. Streff used his mirrors intelligently. He cleared the way for Senna, and Senna is blasting, James.
Yep, Senna is very much on a quick one. We tend to think of him as being very experienced. Yesterday he showed a bit of an experience. He was a bit untidy with the car in, as it were, trying too hard. He was pushing too hard, got a bit ragged and didn't go very well. His opening lap here today when he had his first run was very much better, and he looks pretty smooth this time because he's got something like just over half a second, or just under half a second, I should say, to make up on Nigel Mansell, and believe me, he'll be very keen to get another pole position. So Ayrton Senna absolutely on the limit. Into the apex, getting the line through the corner, making the corner, smoothing it out as best he can, just clipping the curb there on the inside and then sliding it out to the exit, riding up the curb. And this is sensational. So Ayrton Senna takes it away from Nigel Mansell, and he knows it. He's slowed right down. He knows that's good enough. And I have to say, I don't think anybody's going to beat that. If I had to put money on it, I'd say that won't be beaten today.
Geronimo, because that's 1:19.843, the first lap ever at Adelaide on this magnificent circuit, under 1 minute 20 seconds, and that is a speed of 170.5 kilometers an hour average around this circuit.
Incidentally, I'm not betting against Senna beating it, but I don't suppose anybody else will. So there is the target for the others, and that's really spread the field out a bit, because Senna is nearly a second quicker than Mansell, who is over a second quicker than Rosberg, who's 3rd. And this is a very rare phenomenon in Grand Prix racing, to have such big gaps at the front. It's usually tenths of a second that separate them, and we've got whole seconds. I mean, Senna is 2 seconds faster than 3rd place man. A yellow flag waving there, that means somebody's off the track or there's some sort of a problem. It's to warn the drivers.
12 minutes to go, and that looks like the problem. It's the Ligier of Philippe Streff, the tall, lanky Frenchman. I don't think this poses too much of a hazard problem for the organisers. I can't see exactly where it is on the circuit because he's parked tight up against the concrete barrier there. But it looks off the racing line, and that being so, I would imagine that the session is unlikely to be stopped. I'm looking down at the chief flag marshal now. I can see no sign of movement down there. I can't see him getting out the red flag, which would indicate that the session's going to be stopped. So Ayrton Senna, with that riveting lap at 1:19.84, 1 minute 19.84 seconds, is in pole position currently for the 7th time in his life. And here is Nigel Mansell, not saying die, because he's going to go for it now. He's in 2nd position on the qualifying grid. His teammate Rosberg is 3rd. Alain Prost is 4th. 5th is still Alboreto, and 6th is Gerhard Berger, who's been there for a long, long time.
Yes, whilst Nigel Mansell is out there having a go, I think he's probably had the best of his tyres now. That is not a new set. That'll be, of the 2 sets that he's been allowed, and in fact he's back in the pits, of the 2 sets he's allowed, they would have made up, picked the best 4 and put them on the car, but it's unlikely to have been good enough, and he's probably unhappy and has come in. There is Ayrton Senna sitting in the car, looking pretty cool considering it's a warm day here and they're very hard work to drive, and looking rather confidently relaxed. Looks quite pleased with himself in an unassuming sort of way.
With the yellow ear plug stuck in to keep out the noise of the engine. Actually, Senna very often looks to me as though he's going to burst into tears. He doesn't smile all that often, and he's got plenty to smile about now in pole position. Here's the hope of Australia, Alan Jones, ex-world champion. He's got major problems, of course, here, because he's in a brand new car, new team, new race engineers. They're trying to get it all together, quite literally, themselves. And Jones is only in 18th position, and there is Keke Rosberg, the flying Finn. He'll be able to smoke next year quite happily, because at the present moment he's in the Williams team, and Keke Rosberg's team owner, Frank Williams, is a very anti-smoking man and tries to read the riot act to Keke, who takes absolutely no notice at all, which he's very prone to do, take no notice at all. Senna still in the car. You'll notice that he's wiping the tears away, tears of sweat actually, because he'll be very, very hot. In a race you can lose a great deal of weight. James, how much weight would you have lost in a race as opposed to practice?
Well, during a race, I used to keep a check on myself and weigh myself, and I used to average about 4 kilos during a Grand Prix, which is a great deal of weight. Mind you, by most drivers' standards, I'm a relatively big chap, and I've got more liquid in me to lose. But it is pure loss of liquid, because they're very, very hard work to drive, and of course it's very hot in the cockpit. You're surrounded basically by the radiators trying to get rid of the heat from this 1,000 horsepower heat producer that propels you. And Jones just coming up to complete his lap. Let's have a look, see if he's improved. And I don't see anything on my monitor to say that he's improved his time, which is currently 24.369. So weight loss certainly is a problem.
So as you watch and enjoy Alan Jones, this is a review of what has happened so far. Keke Rosberg started this final 60-minute session in pole position with a time of 1 minute 22.402. Ayrton Senna relaxing. Then Alain Prost took pole position, 1:22.263. Senna, that you're looking at, put in 3 very quick ones, 21.750, and got it down to 21.053. Out comes Nigel Mansell to take pole position, 1:20.537. Now Senna, sitting confidently in the cockpit, 1:19.83. And as James has said, that is going to be super difficult to beat. But Mansell is coming out again. Mansell is coming out again, and that could be significant. We've seen him come out once, go into the pits, clearly unhappy with something or other. And Nigel Mansell is exuding confidence these days. He's totally relaxed. He knows he can do it in terms of pole position and race win, and he's going to try again for pole.
Yes, one interesting fact I see looking at the list of times is that Nelson Piquet, who I think is about to go out, he's just going out, is one of the few people who has not improved his time from yesterday. So, with 7 minutes left, Piquet has obviously taken a bit of a risk because he's waited and waited and waited, hoping that the track will get more and more rubber on, which in theory should make it faster and faster. Also, of course, it's quite clever because most people have used their tyres and he's getting a relatively clear track. So Nelson Piquet is the man to watch.
Well, I wonder why Senna is going out again, because with that 119.84, I would have thought he was absolutely secure. It may be that they're just using what remains of this session, which I estimate to be about 6 laps, to check something on the car. They may have made a minor alteration. And here is Nelson Piquet. Now, is he on a quick one? Not at the moment, he's not. But, of course, he's on his build-up speed lap. Double world champion, last race meeting with Brabham before, after 8 years with the Brabham team, he drives in 1986 for Williams at reputedly a fee of 3.3 million American dollars for a year's work. That's not bad, is it? Now it's lining up. Well, that's it. Look at that black smoke. That's what indicates that Nelson Piquet is going for pole.
Yes, this is very much a last-ditch do-or-die effort for Nelson. He's on his soft qualifying tyres, which will last 1 lap, at the most 2. And he has some 5 minutes left to get his act together. Nelson Piquet was right up at the front on yesterday's times and is now being steadily pushed down to 8th place, and he won't be happy with that at all.
30 degrees heat at Adelaide, sparks striking off the titanium skid plates of Nelson Piquet's Brabham. I've got the stopwatch running. And this is indubitably a quick one, and Senna has gone out with just 4 minutes to go, according to my watch. Piquet is getting close to pole. That's the time that he's got to beat, and it's been put up by Ayrton Senna, who is behind Piquet on the circuit, going for it himself. So now here's Piquet catching one of the Renaults. Will it move over and let him through and keep his racing line? Well, it doesn't really matter. It's not a Renault, it's Mansell, and I'm watching the monitor. Piquet was in 8th position, and there's been no movement of the monitor yet, so it looks as though his 1:22.718 remains his fastest time, and he's still, therefore, in 8th place.
Yes, that's right. He did improve a little bit. There's Ayrton Senna going out. I don't think he'll be in too much of a panic. He must know that his time is pretty much uncatchable, but he may be out there just to cover himself in case Piquet's got something up his sleeve. However, I think Piquet's lap time then proves that he certainly hasn't got 3 seconds up his sleeve, which is what he'd need to find to catch Ayrton Senna.
Well, here's Senna. Now, what we haven't told you is that all these cars have a mandatory maximum weight of, sorry, a maximum minimum weight of 520 kilograms, and there is a computer in the pit lane which randomly brings them in on a light signal, and when they're brought in, they have to go onto 4 weighing machines. There they are, 1 for each corner of the car. Front right, front left, rear right, rear left. The car is weighed. The drivers have their weight taken at the beginning and the middle of the season. The computer automatically subtracts the driver's weight from the total, and if the figure which results is below 520 kilograms, there's a problem, because they're underweight, and their time will be excluded for the whole session. So you can destroy a whole practice session by being just a whisker of a kilogram underweight. And it's Jacques Lafitte's Ligier being weighed now. And there's another indication of the Adelaide efficiency. All the weight marshals and the height of the wing is being checked, are in identical white overalls and hats. The only place that I've ever seen anything like that in terms of smartness is Imola in Italy, where the San Marino Grand Prix is held. And now it's 2 minutes to go approximately, and look at Senna. Is he going to try and really rub salt into the wounds of Nigel Mansell and Keke Rosberg by going even faster than his 1 minute 19.843. In front of him is Nigel Mansell, and that's Senna's time, number 12 on the digital readout in the bottom right corner. The target 1 minute 19.8. He's into the long, long left-hander now. Now coming down to Mitsubishi corner, the hairpin, and this could be it. We could be seeing the conclusion of what's the fastest lap of the afternoon as Senna comes up to the line, but it is not. 1 minute 20.9, amazingly, is 1.1 seconds outside his own fastest lap.
Yes, I think he was on used tyres then. Actually, I think he's going for another quick run. He still seems to be giving it the 10/10 treatment, but he's unlikely to be able to better that 19.8 now that the tyres have done this much work, because they will be just past their very best. So Senna really in a class of his own. He's dominated this race meeting so far, with the exception of a little bit of ragged driving yesterday afternoon, which stopped him getting the quickest time yesterday, but he has calmed himself down and re-established him. There is Nelson Piquet, who has been out, given of his best, but really was a long way off the pace. Oops! And he didn't see Senna coming. That was very nearly a bit of a sloppy piece of driving, not looking in his mirrors and the arrows there.
Well, you can see the lines of wear developing on Senna's car now, car tyres, and that's a comparatively leisurely lap. Out goes the amazing checkered flag. More athletics there than you see in most places. And so, at the conclusion of the final 60-minute qualifying session here at Adelaide for the first ever World Championship Australian Grand Prix, this man, Ayrton Senna, the Brazilian in his JPS Lotus Renault, is in pole position for the start of tomorrow's 82-lap race, with an amazing lap in 1 minute 19.8 seconds. Nigel Mansell, who has won the last 2 Grand Prix, will be just a whisker behind him on the staggered grid on the front row. Nigel Mansell's teammate, Keke Rosberg, in 3rd position on the 2nd row, and that is very significant. Both the Williams Hondas are up at the front. Alain Prost, and this is even more significant, knowing that the McLarens do not qualify as well as the other cars, or many of them, is in 4th position. Significant too is the fact that Michele Alboreto in the Ferrari is in 5th place, and it does look as though the work that the Ferrari team have done on their cars has improved their handling and performance. Gerhard Berger, the young Austrian countryman of world champion Niki Lauda, is in 6th position. Patrick Tambay, the Frenchman in the Renault, is in 8th position. But as I talk to you, there has been a change. It's Senna pole, Mansell 2nd, Rosberg 3rd, Prost 4th, Alboreto 5th. Up to 6th position has gone Marc Surer. Down to 7th place has gone Gerhard Berger. 8th is Patrick Tambay, 9th is Piquet, as Gerard Ducarouge in the spectacles, the designer of Senna's car, congratulates the Brazilian, who coolly as ever walks back to the pit, receiving the plaudits and congratulations of the whole Lotus team. Ayrton Senna, who says, I want in life to do as well as I can in racing. I will try my hardest and do my best, has indeed done so today. But Nigel Mansell, as Senna goes into the pit, these magnificent pits, and it seems unbelievable that they're going to be unbolted and stored somewhere until next year. Well, after this, what happens? I'll tell you what happens. The drivers, the race engineers get together somewhere quiet in their transporter and they debrief, just as you do after a military mission. They sit down coolly, calmly, dispassionately. They say, is the ride height right? Is the wing adjustment right? Are the roll bars right? Have we got the right springs on? Were the tyre compounds okay? Can it take any more boost? All those, that's Peter Waugh on the right, the Lotus team manager, and he's the man that's responsible for Ayrton Senna joining the Lotus team. And there's the mandatory cap. That's the sponsor's cap. And a racing driver's reflex action these days, quite literally, is, as the helmet goes off, to put on the cap. And you'll notice on the podium tomorrow, whoever it is that wins, and it could be this man, will put on the cap as quickly as he possibly can. So, at the end of a superb qualifying session, back to Mike Gibson.
Yesterday's times are irrelevant because the track appeared to be quicker this morning. Most people who were out without particularly trying to qualify were still doing quicker times than they did yesterday, and Piquet has quite wisely used going out first as a tactic. He was down at the end of the pit road at the head of the queue some 10 minutes before they got the green light, and that gives him a chance to get a clear lap, because the big problem in qualifying for the drivers is that when you, the driver, are on a quick lap, there may be other drivers who are not on a quick lap. This you will see as we go on, because they really only do one fast lap and then they go slowly to cool their tyres down. And so one of the big problems is to get a clear track. So we'll try and point this out to you. You'll see drivers looking for a clear track before they build up to their quick lap.
And behind Nelson Piquet, as he builds up speed, is his Swiss teammate Mark Surer in the other Brabham BMW. If you like, protecting Nelson Piquet and helping to keep the track clear. I don't think that's the main purpose he's out. But when Nelson Piquet comes round at the end of this lap, we can expect him to really go for it. This BMW engine of his produces some 1,000 horsepower plus in qualifying trim. He's got the softest compound of Pirelli tyres on his car. They have been preheated to make sure that the consistency is good for the track, which is nice and hot. And Nelson Piquet is approaching the line now. Over it he goes. His target time, 1 minute 22.40.
Yes, and he looks as if he's gone straight in for a quick one, because he really built up. You can see him sliding the car there. He might have taken 2 laps. He's been lucky knocking the front brake. A little puff of smoke from the right front wheel then. But Nelson's gone straight into the 10/10ths mode. Big slide, tail coming out there. 1,000 horsepower, even with those big tyres, is plenty to unstick the rear end of the car. That Tambay did by doing 2 slow laps to get his tyres right. It seems that they come in better on this track if they're warmed up slowly, because if they warm up quickly, the rear tyres heat up faster than the fronts, and of course then the rear tyres tend to overheat and they lose grip at the back. So now to bring in his tyres in very carefully. It's quite an important tactical thing. You can ruin tyres by driving incorrectly on them. So now Lauda coming round towards the end of the lap, and he will then be starting a quick one, I have no doubt. Right. No, it doesn't sound like it. He's over the start-finish line. I think Nicky is still taking, yes, he's still taking a slow, gentle one.
So, with some 10 minutes of this 60-minute session completed, it's still Keke Rosberg in pole position, 1,000th of a second faster than Ayrton Senna, with Nigel Mansell third, all of them on yesterday's times. Nelson Piquet in 4th position, Eddie Cheever 5th, and Ricardo Patrese 6th. Live at Adelaide, 13 minutes into the 60-minute qualifying session, which is going to decide the grid positions for tomorrow's Australian Grand Prix. You look at the reigning world champion, Alain Prost, who had a bad stomach upset yesterday, who was well down the grid compared with what he expected, only in 7th position. And as you look at Prost, it is still Keke Rosberg, fastest from yesterday's time, followed by Ayrton Senna, with Nigel Mansell in third position, Nelson Piquet in fourth place. Decaturville Terrace section, named the Brabham Straight for the Australian Grand Prix. Now he goes slowly into racetrack hairpin, and as James said, he's literally cooling it, taking it nice and easy on this lap to give the tyres a chance to stabilise themselves. And then as he comes out of Mitsubishi corner and lines it up for the straight, down will go his right foot if he's going for a fast lap again, and we don't know that for sure. It looks to me as though he's not, because Piquet comes into the pits, and at the present moment he is the only car on the circuit, and we are now some 6 minutes into this qualifying session. And it's often not until the very closing minutes that we get the blindingly fast laps, when everybody knows what the score is, what they've got to go for, and go out to try to beat the target.
Yes, yesterday we had a very... And there goes one of the McLarens heading out onto the track. That's Niki Lauda. He's on brand new tyres, so he'll be taking a lap or so quite gently to scrub them in. With these big racing tyres, they work... They don't work at all, obviously, when they're brand new, but they work best when they're about a lap old. For 2 or 3 laps, the tyres are best when they've got maximum rubber on, apart from just scrubbing and scuffing the surface to get them run in, as it were. You can see the sticky labels still on them. But yesterday we had a very good session, because the one-lap super soft rubber compound qualifying tyres, which are normally the way to get the quick time, and they only last 1 lap or sometimes 2, depending on the track, they weren't working any better than the normal race tyres that are designed to go for the full distance. So we had the rare spectacle of a lot of the drivers staying out for quite a lot of laps. But I think we probably won't get that today, because if we were going to get it, I think probably most of the cars would have been out already. So they are, it would appear, they've difficult to get into a really good rhythm to come out cold and go straight on to 10 tenths. But a man of Nelson's experience and talent certainly can do that. Now, out onto the long straight. They were exceeding 300 kilometers an hour on this straight this morning, and they'll be running more power now.
Twice a world champion, and tomorrow's Australian Grand Prix is going to be Nelson Piquet's last drive for the Brabham team that he's been in for 8 years, and he will want to leave on a very high note. Part of that high note could be being in pole position on the starting grid for when the Australian Grand Prix begins. And now he's coming down towards the Mitsubishi corner, the hairpin at the end of the lap, approaching it at well over 200 kilometers an hour. Over the line he goes. 1:24.5 was my unofficial timing, and the official timing 1:23.35, which means to say that he is still in 4th position, because his time is still slower than those of Mansell, Senna and Rosberg yesterday. Now he's slowing down.
Yes, he'll take a slow lap to cool his tyres. There's his teammate Mark Sierra, who's come into the pits for some sort of an adjustment, probably not quite happy with the way his car was balanced, the way it was handling. But Piquet's done well, because he's still got a clear track. Now he's doing a slow lap, so he may just stay out there, use this lap to cool his tyres down, not slide the car around, and then build up to another quick one, which, if he's got the right compound on that he can do that, he'll want to, because interestingly enough, nobody else has gone out yet. Only the 2 Brabhams have gone straight out. Now you see how slowly he's going. That's to give the tyres plenty of time to cool down and not to scrub them at all, create no extra friction.
18 pole positions in his career, Nelson Piquet. Coming down the fastest part of the course,
sorted out, making the qualifying tyres work. Patrick Tambay has just left the pits in his Renault, or just leaving, and incidentally, the Renault team, who've had a pretty abysmal season, one way or another, are going better than usual here. And Tambay and Warwick are enjoying at least a reasonably drivable
So Patrick Tambay, who has the radio camera on his car, and we're looking at it live now as Tambay approaches the right-hander here, accelerates away, and he's approaching towards the fastest part of the course. This is the Thomson live camera, which has been developed for just this job. He's coming into Stag Turn now at about 120 kilometers an hour, down towards Brewery Bend, which he'll take at about 150 kilometers an hour, accelerate away, up through the gearbox, into 5th gear, into 6th gear, up towards 310 kilometers an hour. You are traveling with Patrick Tambay. We're coming to the braking area now. You'll see from the color change on the circuit, bump, there it is, into the right-hander at racetrack hairpin. That's the slowest part of the course, about 100 kilometers an hour, round paddock turn. It's a long, long left-hander which keeps on going left, which leads into the right sweep at about 200 miles, about 200 Ks, then down to the hairpin at Mitsubishi corner with the grandstands to the left as he goes down the finishing straight and down towards the S's. And here he is doing about 260 Ks. Now, while this has been going on, Niki Lauda is out on the course.
Yes, and Tambay not yet got his tyres as he wants them. You have to bring them in carefully, so he's doing another slow lap. Here is Lauda, who I would suspect is doing the same thing